I hereby call this meeting of the Washington Metro Rail Safety Commission to order. This meeting is being recorded as well as streamed live for the public, and I'm sorry, I apologize to everyone for a late start. Ms. Silbaugh, do we have a quorum today?
Yes, Chair, we do have a quorum today. Participating in the meeting are yourself as Chair, Vice Chair Lobby, Secretary Treasurer Farrar Dyke. Let's see, Commissioners Bob, Higgins, and Robinson. And Commissioners Higgins and Robinson are voting members today.
Thank you, Ms. Silbaugh. Now we will turn to our safety message from Mr. Braxton. Mr. Braxton, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Hart. Some days this summer, the temperature has been exceptionally high. Heat-related illnesses are a serious risk during hot weather, especially for those working outdoors or in high-temperature environments. Heat exhaustion and heat stroke can develop quickly and may be life-threatening if not addressed. Signs of heat exhaustion include heavy sweating, weakness, dizziness, nausea, and headache. If untreated, it can progress to heat stroke, which is marked by confusion, loss of consciousness, and a body temperature above 103 degrees Fahrenheit. Heat stroke is a medical emergency. Call 911 immediately. To prevent heat-related illnesses, stay hydrated, take regular breaks, wear lightweight, breathable clothing, and use sunscreen. And know your limits and stay safe. Check in with your family, friends, and neighbors on extremely hot days too, to remind them of these heat-related precautions. That is the safety message for today.
Thank you, Mr. Braxton. We will now move on to the minutes from our last meeting. Commissioner Farrar Dyke, the floor is yours.
Thank you. The minutes of the June 10th, 2025 meeting were posted for review. In addition, I would like to report on the closed sessions held on June 10th, July 7th, and July 22nd. The commissioners confirm that during those sessions, the commissioners discussed only issues related to the internal personnel rules and practices of the agency in accordance with the requirements of United States Code Title V, Section 552B, subsection C2. At the conclusion of the sessions, the commissioners gave direction for action to Chair Hart and planned their final test. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes of June 10th, 2025? If not, I move approval of the June 10th, 2025 minutes as circulated. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Bob has seconded the motion. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say yay.
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 Any opposed, please raise your hand and say nay.
Chair, the vote is unanimous, 6 yeas, 0 nays. The minutes are adopted as presented.
Thank you, Ms. Silbaugh. Next, we will provide an opportunity for public comments, as we do at each of our meetings. To ensure we recognize all who wish to speak, we provided an opportunity for those who have joined the Zoom meeting to sign up in the chat box. If you wish to speak but did not sign in, please do so now. I would also remind everyone, including those of you watching on YouTube, that you can always report any safety concerns to us through our website, WMSC.gov, through our social media channels, or by email. Ms. Silbaugh, do we have anyone who has indicated they would like to speak today?
No, Chair, no public speakers today.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Silbaugh. We will now continue with the next agenda item, which is my remarks. Our meeting today includes updates on the WMSC's ongoing safety oversight activities and the actions that we take on a daily basis to help ensure that Metro Rail upholds its safety commitments and strives to continuously improve the safety of its system. I appreciate the ongoing communication and coordination that the WMSC staff conducts with Metro Rail at all levels of both organizations. This includes the ongoing work related to audits and corrective action plans, safety certification, and inspections. I reported last fall that I, along with my commissioner colleagues, have periodically joined WMATA Chair Santos and some of her board member colleagues for lunch. It has been a great opportunity for us to get to know each other And in June, we had 2 lunches, in part so we could share our best wishes to departing board member and Safety Committee Chair Don Drummer. I was pleased to learn that Chair Santos was reappointed as WMATA Chair, and I look forward to our continuing and productive conversations between the WMSC commissioners and the WMATA board members. Dr. Meyer, do you have any opening remarks?
Yes, thank you, Chair Hart. I do have some updates. Just make sure everything's working over here. Concerning the annual revision to the WMSC program standard, we received comments on this year's draft from WMATA and also from several of our jurisdictional partners. I've had the opportunity to meet with several of these partners and anticipate meeting with more during the coming weeks. I appreciate the dialogue that we've started, and I look forward to continued communication to share the WMSC's work and hear the jurisdictional interests. The commissioners and staff were working through all of the comments received, and we anticipate presenting the draft program standard to the commissioners for your review at a future public meeting. Since our June public meeting, the WMSC and WMATA have continued to engage in many discussions regarding safely expanding the use of automatic train operation, or ATO, to the rest of the Metro Rail system. We requested and WMATA provided evidence that demonstrated that it has substantially accomplished the mitigations necessary to safely activate ATO on the green and yellow lines, which led to our concurrence on May 20th, 2025. During the weeks that followed, WMATA continued to demonstrate substantial implementation of mitigations on the red, yellow, and green lines, and therefore the WMSC determined that WMATA could safely expand the use of ATO to passenger service on the blue, orange, and silver lines. The WMSC concurred on this expansion on June 12th, 2025. Later in today's meeting, Mr. Paul Smith will provide more details about our communications with Metro Rail, the steps that Metro Rail took that led to our concurrence on ATO system-wide, and WMATA's continued work to understand and reduce station overruns. Next, I have positive news concerning one of WMSC's notices of non-compliance. You recall that per our program standard, these notices are sent to WMATA if, after repeated attempts, it has failed to respond to a WMSC order or corrective action plan requirement. We recently resolved one of the 5 notices of non-compliance. WMSC issued this notice of non-compliance in October 2024 because Metro Rail was late in finishing the load ratings on its elevated structures. Since the WMSC issued that notice, Metro has completed the 84 remaining load ratings. As a result, WMATA now knows the loading capacity for each of its bridges, and Ms. Rhodes will provide more details later in today's meeting. The WMSC and Metro Rail's roadway worker protection teams continue their collaborative work to meet the requirements of the September 2024 WMSC order on Metro Rail's roadway worker protection program, as well as the Federal Transit Administration's Rail Transit Roadway Worker Protection Regulation, which was finalized in December of last year. Metro Rail has developed parts of its roadway worker protection program and is continuing to submit training and qualifications program materials for WMSC review. The WMSC is reviewing these materials for compliance with our RWP order and the FTA's requirements. The staff are continuing to meet regularly, and they recently held the 3rd Roadway Worker Protection Program workshop. The WMSC remains optimistic that we'll be providing our approval of WMATA's RWP program in the coming months. Turning to the current WMATA RWP training and qualification program, during an inspection of Metro Rail records as part of the ongoing track structures and roadway worker protection audit, WMSC staff found a number of records that did not support that some WMATA personnel are qualified to set up and be in charge of roadway worker safety. WMSC staff informed the technical training and development manager that day and sent an email to the WMATA quality team the next morning. The WMSC returned and concluded additional training documentation reviews the following day, leading us to notify WMATA of an urgent hazard, which is a process that's set forth in our program standard. WMATA responded to each of the WMSC's communications, including a call last Thursday in which WMATA began defining its plan to remedy the training and/or training documentation shortcomings. Mr. O'Donnell will provide more details in his presentation later in today's meeting. Finally, Yesterday, the WMSC released its first special study. Special studies are an opportunity to focus on specific processes or programs, and in this instance, the WMSC reviewed WMATA's Metro Rail radio band infrastructure replacement project. Our audits focus on existing communications processes, whereas this study focused on the updates to WMATA's radio system itself. This was a direct response to inconsistent and unintelligible radio coverage that was a factor in a number of safety investigations over many years. In fact, our 2024 audit of emergency management and life safety programs found that Metrorail does not have a reliable communication system for its operations or emergencies. WMATA awarded a 5-year contract to upgrade its radio system in 2017. That work is now expected to be completed in 2027. Non-functioning radio coverage creates serious safety concerns. Our study found that WMATA leadership has renewed its focus on this radio modernization project, and for the sake of safety improvement, it is critical that Metrorail maintain this renewed focus. Mr. O'Donnell will provide additional details about the study during his presentation, which is now next up in the meeting. So that concludes my remarks. Chair Hart, I believe you're muted.
How am I doing now?
Very good.
Okay, I don't know how that happened because I didn't mute me, so I'm not convinced that we have completely found the answer. So stay tuned. Okay, so are there any questions from any of the commissioners for Dr. Meyer?
I see no hands raised.
Thank you. In that case, we will now move on to our next item, which is audits with an update from Mr. O'Donnell. Mr. O'Donnell?
Yes, thank you, Chair Hart. The WMSC is in the process of completing our triennial cycle of audits. Each of these audits examines Metrorail's compliance with its Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan and the associated requirements. One audit that has not progressed is our 2024 Fitness for Duty and Occupational Health Programs audit. WMATA has not responded to the WMSC's initial request when WMATA believes that worker safety information is responsive to the request. The WMSC is seeking relief through the courts. Because the WMSC conducts audits on an ongoing basis throughout a 3-year cycle, each audit is in a different stage of completion. I will provide an update on each audit that is currently underway. First, the Control Center and Rail Operations audit. The draft report for this audit was provided to Metrorail on July 10th. Metrorail has until August 11th to provide comments to the WMSC. The WMSC carefully considers all comments, and the final report is issued only after appropriate revisions are made to the report. Next update is on the elevator and escalator audit. This report is currently being reviewed by WMSC staff, with a draft audit report expected to be sent to WMATA this month. Moving to the next audit, on July 24th, we completed interviews and on-site observations for the track structures and roadway worker protection audit. As Dr. Meyer stated, our records review for this audit included verifying compliance of the training and qualification records for roadway worker protection training. Currently, WMATA has 3 levels of RWP qualification. Level 4 individuals are referred to as roadway workers in charge. As roadway workers in charge, they are responsible for supervising the work site and directly ensuring the safety of all work taking place in their respective work zone. According to WMATA's records, as of July 15th, there are 1,246 RWP Level 4 employees. When the WMSC staff began its review of the Level 4 records of those individuals, they found most were incomplete or not in compliance with the training rules. Thus, these records did not support the individuals having the stated qualification. On the day this was discovered, the WMSC told WMATA management what it had found, and the following day, when WMSC personnel returned to continue record review, WMATA personnel were already on site to do the same. WMATA relies on the training records to know that roadway workers have the knowledge and practical understanding of roadway worker protection rules and procedures. However, the WMSC personnel found numerous examples in which these records did not conform to WMATA's own written requirements. In the weeks since this was discovered, WMATA reviewed a larger sample of 294 training records. That sampling breaks down into two primary groups: those level 4 individuals who have only received their initial qualification and those who have received re-qualification training. Of the initial qualification group, 88%, or 130 individuals, do not have training records that support receiving their level 4 qualification, but did. WMATA has committed to fully retesting all 130 of those individuals over the course of 90 days, beginning in late August. Of the second group, those who have received their level 4 requalification, WMATA sampling indicates that 9%, or 120 individuals, do not have records that support receiving their level 4 requalification, but did. Over the next month, WMATA is going to review all 1,200 requalification individuals' training records to further evaluate the issue before determining a path forward on that group. Since conveying this problem to WMATA on July 10th, we have remained in regular contact. We appreciate WMATA's acknowledging these nonconformances and its focus on correcting them. We will provide updates in the coming months, and the WMSC is thrilled by the speed of which WMATA started to work to address this issue. This is exactly the response and attention that a safety hazard should receive. For all other parts of the track and structures and roadway worker protection audit, we are now finishing a review of additional documents as we prepare to brief Metro on our preliminary findings and recommendations at the exit conference scheduled for August 19th. My last update is in regards to the communication system audit and the related but distinctly separate special study of safety impacts of WMATA's radio band and infrastructure replacement project. The communication systems audit is the final audit we're completing in our third triennial cycle and focuses on voice and data transmission systems that are presently in use, like radio and public address systems. The audit also focuses on inspection, maintenance, and engineering and other practices for those systems. By contrast, the special study focused on WMATA's long-planned future 700 megahertz spectrum radio system that is intended to replace the current 400 megahertz spectrum system. Although both the audit and the study overlap on the topic of radio, they examine different radio systems. Before embarking on the audit and study, the WMSC carefully considered how to reduce and prevent additional burden to WMATA. For example, interviews were kept to a minimum where necessary. Only 6 interviews were requested for the study compared to 26 interviews for the audit. Only 2 individuals were interviewed for both the audit and the study, and for those 2, that was a total of less than 1 hour of their time each, separated by a month. Separating the interviews allowed for focused discussion on each project area. Requested documents were limited in number and focused on the specific project with no overlap. The result was no substantial burden to WMATA beyond the required audit. The WMSC continues work on the draft communication systems audit report. However, the special study was issued yesterday. The special study was conducted because the WMSC and earlier WMATA safety oversight organizations have been aware of issues with inconsistent and unintelligible radio coverage at Metrorail for at least the last decade, and radio issues have played a role in safety events and near misses. As recently as the WMSC's 2025 audit of emergency management and life safety programs, continued radio issues were identified, including in a finding that states Metrorail does not have a reliable communication for operations or emergencies. Metrorail has been working on its radio replacement project since 2015, with a major contract for this work beginning in 2017, which included updating infrastructure required for cell phone use, as well as radio coverage to benefit both internal WMATA operations as well as local jurisdictional first responders. This work is currently projected to continue into 2027. To date, the project has cost $569.4 million and has experienced repeated delays. These delays directly affect the safety of the system because the long-term radio improvements and fixes will not be realized until the project concludes and there is a full cutover to the new system. Paul Smith will provide some additional details on the project complexity and delays. Paul, do you?
The study found 4 key reasons for the project delays. Early in the project, the cellular infrastructure project took priority over the radio update work, causing an approximately 2-year delay. An initial lack of fiber redundancy led to fiber redesign issues and an additional delay of another 2 years. Initially, the fiber work was scoped to include other projects separate from the radio initiative. This work on separate projects added an additional delay of 6 months. And lastly, work restrictions during the COVID-19 pandemic added an additional 6-month delay. Additionally, to understand the delay in this project in comparison to other complex rail infrastructure projects, the study drew comparison with a Burlington Northern Santa Fe, or BNSF, railway project implementing positive train control technology, in which BNSF constructed and activated an extensive radio communications infrastructure, including more than 6,000 radio towers across its rail network of more than 11,000 track miles, and equipped over 5,000 locomotives with onboard communications hardware. And although freight rail systems and transit systems face different challenges, both face operational constraints, must resolve integrated infrastructure challenges, overcome multi-jurisdictional delays, and interact with potentially several offices of the federal government. Some examples of this project also facing challenges of integrated infrastructure include the FCC imposing a year-long freeze on the construction of any of the radio tower sites during this project, and major technological challenges to ensure that the PTC systems from different railroads could communicate and operate seamlessly with those being constructed.
Thank you, Paul, for that. Because of the project's delays and continued evidence that the radio system is continuing to have an impact on safety, the study sought to understand the degree of the radio system's impact on safety events. The WMSC identified 64 investigation reports that cite radio or communication issues for events that occurred between April 2019 and July 2024. Additionally, between February 1st and April 24th of this year, there were 15 system-wide radio outages reported, and radio communication challenges complicated emergency response to a person fatally struck by a train in January 2025. Over the last year, WMATA has reprioritized focus on completing radio fiber work prior to other fiber initiatives. This has decreased previously projected delays to complete the radio project. The study concludes by recommending that WMATA leadership continue its focus on prioritizing completion of the radio modernization project to improve radio communications at Metrorail because of the identified safety concerns and associated with non-functioning radio coverage. In addition, the WMSC recommends relevant oversight authorities such as WMATA's Office of Inspector General take note of issues with this radio project and the project's progress to date and provide any additional oversight necessary. As part of the special study process, WMATA was provided with a draft of this report for their review and comment prior to its issuance. Finally, turning to our last audit update, we're continuing the audit of Metrorail's internal safety reviews program. Our notification of this audit and initial request was sent to Metrorail on July 17th. Documents are set to be received by August 18th. Once we have the initial documents, we will plan audit interviews and observations with Metrorail. Thank you. That completes this presentation.
Thank you, Mr. O'Donnell and Mr. Smith. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for either Mr. O'Donnell or Mr. Smith?
Yes, the vice chair has raised his hand.
Yes, please, Vice Chairman.
Chair Hart, Mr. O'Donnell, in talking about your roadway worker protection audit, you talked about some of the training issues. Do you have a feeling on whether the training issues are a record-keeping issue or an actual training issue, or maybe a combination of both?
Yes, thank you, Vice Chair. It's a little bit of a combination of both, honestly, with what we were seeing. We were seeing some files where there was overrides of scores. There was a lack of calculating scores correctly and things like that. But there is also a lot of record-keeping issues because these are paper records. So that is definitely contributing to the issues for sure. But it's a mix of both.
And certainly it is, of course, the paperwork that we use to verify that the workers who are in the field setting up these work zones are qualified to do that work. And because of the paperwork issues, neither we can be sure of that nor can Metro. But the important and I think good news is that the audit is really just getting started, and we anticipate that this issue will be either completely resolved or much more adequately understood as the audit progresses, and certainly for the final report.
Thank you.
And Chair, Commissioner Bob has raised his hand.
Yes, Commissioner Bob, please.
Yes, my question is, I noted that the Inspector General is involved, and normally I have a different definition of involvement of an Inspector General. So why in this particular case?
You're referring to the radio special study, Commissioner?
Yeah, Mr. O'Donnell's last in Mr. O'Donnell's presentation.
And we kept the Inspector General's office involved throughout the course of our work, making sure they were aware that we were looking into radio system upgrades. Our work was conducted entirely from the point of view of improving safety at Metro Rail and the role that a deficient radio system plays in safety. However, because this was a contract matter and a matter in which dollar signs were involved, we wanted to keep the Inspector General's office involved for their situational awareness. And in fact, yesterday after we released the product, we also made sure that they were aware that it was now a public document.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from any of the other commissioners, from Mr. O'Donnell or Mr. Smith?
I see no other hands, Chair.
Okay, seeing none, we will now take up the next agenda item, which is corrective action plans. Mr. Raddick, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Hart. We currently have 77 open corrective action plans. Each CAP has milestones that are called actionable items. Metro submits those actionable items on the agreed upon schedule defined by the CAP. In practice, this means that the WMSC receives actionable items every week on a subset of CAPs. For example, last week we received 9 scheduled submittals. WMSC personnel are assigned to review these submittals, and those are assigned based on the CAP subject matter. We review CAP submittals as they come in, and then again, altogether, once all items have been submitted, to review the overall CAP progress as a holistic improvement. The final complete corrective action is achieved at the conclusion of all actionable items. Today, we have 6 CAPs that have reached that final closure milestone, and I will now ask our corrective action plan program manager to assist our discussion on recently closed CAPs. Ms. Rhodes, which CAP is up first and what is it about?
Our first is C-72, which led to Metro Rail developing load ratings for its bridges and aerial structures.
And could you get into why are load ratings significant?
Our January 2025 audit of Metro Rail's elevated structures found that Metro Rail did not have load ratings for any of its bridges. Load ratings are an industry standard engineering practice that confirms the number or type of trains or size of equipment that can safely cross a structure.
There were a few delays and challenges for this CAP. Can you talk about those?
Sure, and you're right, there were delays. As commissioners may recall, the WMSC had to issue a notice of non-compliance in October of 2024 because Metro Rail was late in finishing the load ratings. Since the WMSC issued that notice, Metro Rail completed the 84 remaining load ratings.
For this CAP, can you talk about what Metro submitted and the scale of the work that Metro had to undertake?
Since the WMSC identified this issue during the 2021 elevated structures audit, Metro Rail began determining load ratings for all of its aerial structures. An initial total of 148 structures, which grew to 161 after the arrival of Silver Line Phase 2. Each load rating was reviewed by a professional engineer with their official seal, and each involves complex calculations based on original design documents and current structure condition reports. The scale of the submittal depends on the structure's size and type, but many submittals are more than 100 pages in length.
And one last question regarding the load ratings. Can you describe the verification that we completed for this?
We enlisted the help of our own independent professional engineer who sampled 7 structures of different sizes and types and essentially checked Metro's calculations by relying on the same documents that Metro's professional engineers had relied upon. To add one more detail, now that Metro has completed its baseline load ratings, if there was ever a seismic event requiring a check on the structure or the future use of a heavier railcar series, it's now an easy task for Metro to determine whether the structure is safe based on the changed variables.
Thanks for that, Ashley. Let's move on to the next one. So similar to load ratings, where Metro had the facts available to determine the load rating, but did not have the calculations done to determine the maximum load, Metro maintained fitness for duty records in paper format that prevented the ability to determine trends, identify expired certifications, or complete timely medical examinations. Ashley, was Metro able to address this and create an electronic system for this data?
Yes, Metro implemented an electronic health system. Before selecting the system, Metro completed a comprehensive review to determine needs and system requirements, such as replacing paper files and collecting data.
When did Metro implement this electronic health system, and what have we seen of it?
The new system went live in January of this year. From January to June, we received submissions that showed the system working with associated records and trend data. For example, regarding obstructive sleep apnea and sleep disorders, we received compliance data and trends by department and could see the format that will be reported to management, which is a level of insight that was not possible before this new system.
So this is a real improvement and a positive outcome to address potential medical issues of employees in safety-sensitive positions.
It is, yes. We certainly appreciate the cooperation and work of Metrorail's Occupational Health and Wellness Group in accomplishing this work.
Midway through this CAP's life cycle, Metro informed the WMSC that it would no longer cooperate on this CAP based on a misunderstanding of the WMSC's regulatory authority related to worker safety. We applaud Metro for continuing this work despite that disagreement and thank Metro for improving the safety of workers and riders by completing this electronic health records project. Ashley, what can Metro now do that it could not do before?
Metro can now comprehensively screen employees for sleep disorders, fatigue, and other health issues, and those records will be backed up securely in a way that permits tracking of required exam expirations and trending information to globally monitor the health risks for all employees.
Thank you, Ashley. Continuing on with the importance of accurate data, we turn to CAP C98 from the 2021 roadway maintenance machines audit, which identified an interesting feature in some Metrorail preventative and maintenance instructions. Can you tell us some more?
Yes, C98 identified that several of Metrorail's preventative maintenance procedures specified precise values for pressure or other measurements, but did not detail acceptable tolerances. For example, instructions for the ballast regulator and core drilling flat car.
And what is the safety impact of not having acceptable tolerances?
Without tolerances that are achievable and within the measuring capabilities of available tools, frontline personnel may ignore the instructions as unrealistic or may apply their own informal tolerances that may not be safe.
So this is a good practice, but not one that is necessarily technically required, and therefore the WMSC offered it as a recommendation. Did Metro take that recommendation?
Yes, Metro took this recommendation seriously.
And what solution did Metro come up with?
Metro consulted with original equipment manufacturers to get the needed information to update their documents with tolerances, which will result in the revision of 60 preventative maintenance manuals to include these values.
And what verification did the WMSC do?
WMSC staff reviewed a sampling of the manuals and found that Metro had inserted tolerances for various measurements and outputs. For example, instructions for the tie crane, placer jet rotor, and swingmaster 10-ton.
Regarding the future equipment purchases, did Metro make any changes there?
For newly purchased equipment, Metro revised its procedures to ensure that appropriate measurement tolerances are included when creating preventive maintenance manuals.
Thank you, Ashley. And moving to the next one, I see that C215 also dealt with maintenance instructions. Can you tell us more about that, Cap?
Yes, the 2022 Communication Systems Audit found that Metro did not have sufficiently detailed instructions for inspecting and maintaining each communication asset. For some assets that lack procedures, technicians were creating and using their own unapproved versions.
Okay, so there was insufficient detail for technicians to do their job, and in some cases, no instructions at all. Do you have any examples?
Yes. For the Silverline's public address system, technicians were unaware of any guidance on that equipment, and that equipment differs from public address systems on the rest of the system. Also, there were no instructions for completing maintenance on the public safety radio system or for conducting system-wide portable radio tests.
And how did Metro address this?
Metro first conducted a comprehensive gap analysis, which looked at all of the assets on the system and compared that against what there were existing maintenance procedures for. Metro determined that 7 preventive maintenance instructions needed to be created. For example, instructions for radio control stations, distributed antenna systems, and bidirectional amplifiers.
Thank you, Ashley. Next is a recommendation that identified an opportunity for a safety improvement in railcar maintenance. Could you talk about C278?
Certainly. During our 2024 railcar audit, we discovered that car maintenance supervisors did not have access to training records for their mechanics unless they requested those records.
And how often do mechanics change supervisors? That is, wouldn't supervisors have familiarity with their direct reports and what they could or could not do?
Metro's frontline mechanics have the opportunity to switch shifts and yard locations about every 6 months. So there is often a subset of personnel coming and going with a change in supervisor possible every 6 months.
Did Metro address this issue?
Yes. Metro created a training dashboard that all supervisors now have access to. Now supervisors can directly access their mechanics training records at any time without having to first request access. They also implemented a policy change requiring supervisors to continuously monitor and reference these training records to ensure personnel have the right training for tasks that they are assigned to.
Thank you, Ashley. And finally, let's talk about another recommendation, C249.
During our 2024 roadway maintenance machines audit, we identified that existing operational manuals and trainings don't provide RMM equipment operators with clear, consistently presented, and easily understandable information.
Can you break down what that looks like in practice?
Unlike with Metro's rail cars, where there are effectively 2 types, Legacy and 7000 series, there are a wide range of different roadway maintenance machines and consistent information about dimensions, safe operating procedures, voltages, temperatures, and other equipment readings and operational restrictions are valuable and necessary for safe operation and troubleshooting. In addition, each of those pieces of information would vary significantly across the various RMM types.
How did Metro address the need for consistency and completeness of information?
Metro created a central repository for RMM equipment operators to access manual materials in case they need that information. Metro also created a detailed design plan template for all RMM equipment operator courses. The design plan lists the minimum requirements for course content, expected training format, delivery methods, and a core curriculum component guide to help make all training courses more consistent with a uniform, complete set of information. This was done in parallel with Metrorail independently pursuing a centralized structure for all trainings. So the RMM trainings are now similarly structured to trainings in other parts of the organization, which provides a more uniform structure and content that can be expected by personnel.
We will continue the feedback loop on how these trainings are being received by equipment operators later this year when we get into the rail car and roadway maintenance machines audit. One last point on corrective action plans. Closure is not the end of the WMSC's monitoring, but it does mean that both Metro Rail and the WMSC have achieved the desired corrective action. Through our other oversight activities, such as inspections and audits, the WMSC will monitor the durability of that corrective action over time. This concludes our remarks on corrective action plans.
Thank you, Mr. Raddick and Ms. Rhodes. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for Mr. Raddick or Ms. Rhodes?
The vice chair has raised his hand.
Yes, Vice Chair.
Thank you for that presentation. Very informative. I did have a couple of questions about load ratings on elevated structures. Do they change significantly over the life of the structure?
That depends on how the condition changes. So if the structure deteriorates significantly, then you might have a corresponding significant load rating change. But for every 2 years, I believe when the structures are reevaluated or reexamined by structural inspectors, you wouldn't expect too much variation in the load rating.
And it is a bit different than, say, a highway bridge in that respect, where there is the potential in the highway world for laying down additional layers of an asphalt or concrete or other material on the top, which can significantly add to the loading of a bridge. And as a topic discussed in some detail in the NTSB's report on the I-35W bridge that collapsed a number of years ago in Minneapolis, but that's usually not the case with these bridges.
Well, I would be surprised if the load rating would change that much, because these elevated structures, they are pretty well maintained, I would assume. Is that correct?
Each structure has a different life and a different, as far as its condition. But
to put a point on the issue that we've been really addressing over many years is, regardless of whether the load ratings changed, WMATA did not know what the load ratings were. They were not in any particular record system or in a file or otherwise available to WMATA. Hence the need to essentially construct these ratings from whole cloth.
Okay, so WMATA never knew what the ratings were to begin with. Is that correct?
correct.
I don't know what they may have known in the past, but during our lifetime as an oversight organization, they have not known, or then they've not been able to provide the data.
And each rail car series has gotten progressively heavier, with the 7Ks being about 10% heavier than the legacy. So that's been a variable change.
Does Metro know their factor of safety? I mean, how much over design do they consider appropriate for an elevated structure?
That is now in each of the engineering documents that show what particular, confidence intervals or factors of safety exist with respect to all of the calculations and work that's been done.
And this is a standard process to manage elevated structures, bridges that's used throughout the country, I would assume.
Yes, it's a methodology, a calculation methodology, and sort of a standardized approach that, if I'm not mistaken, really is incorporated in a Federal Highway Administration document that provides the guidance for doing this kind of work.
Thank you very much.
What was that last comment? I didn't hear the last comment.
The vice chair was asking the extent to which the practices that were used to calculate the load ratings, I hope I capture it correctly, and the extent to which these practices are a matter of industry best practice or industry standard. And I indicated that, yes, that's documented in a Federal Highway Administration publication or series of publications that provides guidance for how to do this kind of work and how to do these kinds of calculations.
And then, Vice Chair, did you have a response to that? Is that what I heard?
No, I that's reassuring. I wanted to make sure that they're following, the typical industry standards for managing both, bridge load ratings at the beginning and also maintenance practices to make sure that those load ratings are maintained appropriately, and to make sure that they have factors of safety to make sure that we never hit the limit and have the possibility of an elevated structure failure, because of the operation of trains over these structures.
And that
So
was
I'm happy with that response. Thank you.
And certainly that was our focus as well. In fact, some of this work was spurred on, maybe counterintuitively, by the move toward increased speed of operations under ATO and the even greater criticality of understanding the loads that these bridges might be subjected to. And in fact, during the process, as a direct result of our oversight, we ensured that each of the bridge load rating calculations and determination documents were all stamped and signed by a registered professional engineer at Metro's choosing.
And the standards is from AASHTO, American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I believe the analysis is not just purely speed, as Dr. Meyer pointed out, that there's harmonics involved at different speeds and natural frequencies of trains going over bridges and things like that, vibrations that also have to be considered.
Chair Hart, Commissioner Bob has raised his hand.
Yes, Commissioner Bob, please.
Yes, I just have a statement. I really appreciate the comments from the vice chair and his questions. And most importantly, I really appreciate on this particular issue, as well as many of the others, but David and the staff's recommendation and evaluation. I mean, I just can't imagine these rails going over all of these big structures and that sort of thing. And so I just wanted to make, I don't have a question, just a comment to express my appreciation for the vice chair's questions, as well as, but most importantly, the work of David and the team with respect to these evaluations.
We really appreciate those comments, Commissioner Bob. I really believe that as a result of this oversight work, it leaves Metro particularly well positioned for the procurement of the next generation of rail cars, because we anticipate that those rail cars will have mass, and it will be useful and now possible for Metro to compare the mass of the cars they'll be procuring to all of the load capacities of their elevated structures.
And Chair, Treasurer for our dike has her hand raised, and then we'll get to Commissioner Higgins.
Yes, Treasurer for Dardike, please.
Yes, I agree. I was going to say that it's good that now they have these on record, because I would think that not only the speed of the trains, but the number of cars that they actually have. And so that should be something that's in the system, and they should be looking at each time when sometimes they increase the number of cars to carry. That should be something that should be listed on there, so that they already know what they can put on this track and what they can't.
Absolutely. That was a consideration we had in mind, because we assume that when the bridges were constructed, they were constructed to some current, well, at that time, unknown load rating. That the load ratings on initial construction were some number that we simply did not know years ago when we did our elevated structures audit, and Metro didn't know. And one of our concerns that was driving the requirement for Metro to do these calculations afresh was that in the early days of Metro rail operations, the earlier legacy cars weighed less than the current cars. And as you just pointed out, the consists were shorter. The trains were made up of 2, 4, and 6 car trains, whereas these days 6 and 8 car trains are much more common.
Thank you for that,
And-
Dr. Meyer.
And Chair Commissioner Higgins has a question as well.
Yes, Commissioner Higgins.
Can you hear me? Am I good?
Yes, 5 by 5.
We're talking about the weight of Metro's knowledge in terms of the weight of their what they're sending over these bridges. I'm curious, given the Francis Scott Key Bridge accident, what we've learned from that about Maryland's lack of knowledge about the maintenance of those bridges, a lack of failure to comply. Certainly Minneapolis, the bridge there. What is the interaction, if we know, between Metro oversight and who actually is responsible for maintaining the bridges and doing the inspections that would be relevant in this kind of, not only for Metro, but for other transportation.
Well, certainly you listed two specific bridges that have collapsed,
Right.
alarmingly so over time. And the I-35W bridge collapse in Minneapolis, the bridge was never constructed to the load capacity that, due to an error, that it was designed to carry. And of course, the Key Bridge collapse has a completely different failure mechanism. But to get to the actual inspection and maintenance of the bridge, like most railroads, Metro owns its infrastructure and is responsible for its infrastructure. So Metro is the entity that is responsible for maintaining and inspecting all of these elevated structures. And as part of our elevated structures audit and as part of subsequent audits, we've accompanied them and checked paperwork and records and documentation, as well as even the tools that they carry to do these inspections, to ensure that Metro's inspectors are qualified, knowledgeable, have the latitude they need to rate the bridges appropriately, and are actually, in fact, doing the work. So it is something that was incorporated in our initial elevated structures audit, which we conducted a number of years ago, as well as subsequent audits.
So do I understand from your comments that Metro then is responsible for maintaining those bridges?
Yes, whether they do the maintenance work themselves or they contract it out, they can certainly, like with anything, they can contract out the work and the labor, but of course they don't contract out the accountability because that's their property essentially.
So I know we've talking about the weight here, and I think the comment about adding cars adds to that issue, but there are obviously other environmental factors, given all the issues involving the environment these days that affect, and just the age of I'm just curious because it's not, I mean, we've seen an unfortunate number of, I mean, not a lot, but they're in our area of accidents affecting these bridges. And I'm just, for example, and this isn't involving Metro, but there's a lot of concern now about the bridges going over the Chesapeake Bay, from Maryland into, well, still from one side of Maryland to the other, because of the age and the increased traffic. And I'm just want to be sure, because it's not something I haven't thought about, that it's clearly Metro's responsibility to not only worry about the load factor, but also the maintenance issues.
Yes, absolutely. And this is, I assure you, not at all news to Metro. They
Okay.
They have an inventory of bridges. While it was deficient in the past that they didn't know the load ratings, they certainly are aware of and do execute their responsibilities to inspect and maintain.
Do we look at their maintenance records?
Yes, as a result of not only the elevated structures audit that we've been talking about, but yes, as a result of subsequent audits, as well as CAP closure requests and CAP management, corrective action plan management, as during the whole process of responding to our elevated structures audit, to ensure that not only that they were continuing to do what they say they do, but also making certain improvements to the process. As I've suggested, ensuring that inspectors have ready access to the tools of the trade for bridge inspection and that sort of thing.
Just out of curiosity, how many bridges is Metro responsible for?
They have 161.
161. Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, and not all of them are rail bridges. Some are pedestrian structure. You see, like, for example, Rhode Island Avenue, there's a few that go over like the CSX tracks there. And so there's others that not all are rail. I don't know the exact breakdown of which ones the trains run on versus people walk on. But there's even a very small, that at Springfield pedestrian bridge that's, I don't know, maybe 30 feet long that no one would know about, but Metro does. And we've had many discussions on that particular bridge.
But certainly there are stretches of elevated rail structure that do carry trains every day.
Yeah.
Thinking about a long section of the system over the Anacostia in DC, as well as, of course, a good bit of the infrastructure that's been added over the years as part of the Silver Line project.
And
wow.
even down to the smallest culverts. For example, there was a CAP years ago, C26, which we found that Metro wasn't doing all of their culvert inspections. So these would be those little that allow creeks or water to flow under. They did an inventory to make sure they knew which ones they own versus another entity owned. And so they have that clarity now, and they do those inspections, which are at a required cadence. So nothing's too small.
Wow. All right. Good. Well, good for you. I think to me, that's an important part of this conversation, because we've seen a lot happen in that arena. So thank you.
And certainly, like we say, Metro has never shied away from its ownership or inspection responsibilities, maintenance responsibilities of its bridges. However, now, as a result of our oversight, we have greater confidence that they are doing the inspection work, that the inspectors have the tools and equipment to do the work, and now Metro has the load ratings that it needs in order to make any judgments that are necessary about future train sets or other wear and tear on the bridges.
Good. All right. Thank you.
And
Thank you.
Chair, the Secretary Treasurer has raised her hand again.
Yes, Secretary Treasurer for our doc, please.
So, hearing all of this, what I have not heard, is there a schedule for inspection for the bridges? Like, is it supposed to be done every year, every 2 years? And are there records that we review or see that shows that a bridge, all 100 or whatever you said there were, are inspected on a yearly basis?
It's every 2 years is the ordinary. That could be increased to 6 months if depending on the structure's condition. Then there's a third sort of aspect, which would be for particularly the structures going over the Anacostia and also the L line bridge that goes over the Potomac. There's a water inspection, to go what they exactly call it, but basically they're looking at scour and things around those piers to make sure there's not any buildup or erosion around in a dangerous way around those piers. So they actually get someone in scuba gear. I think they contracted out Metro, and they go and check those. They drop poles, they poke around, and they do that. They have to do that every 5 years, and we check on that too.
Oh, so we review that. We have a database that has all that included in there.
We typically review it during our audits, and then but usually the audits come faster than those 5-year cycles too. But we do check through, and we have access to those records when we request it.
Wow.
And Chair, Commissioner Bob has raised his hand.
Yes, Commissioner Bob, please.
Yes, I just have a quick question, having been responsible for a number of municipalities around the country, but what is the role of the local government in this? Because in my experience is when there's been a issue with a bridge, whether you had a metro rail going over it or large vehicles, the federal inspectors or whomever start knocking on the doors of the local government. So what role does the local governments play with regard to this particular issue in terms of their inspections as well? It seems to me it would be a coordinated inspection between Metro Rail, WMSC, and the local jurisdictions.
So the Metro owns the structures, and they're responsible for inspecting and maintaining those structures. And their engineers on staff, as well as any contractors they use, have to be professional engineer certifications, which would be done at the state level. And then we are essentially the local government oversight that ensures that those things happen the way they're supposed to happen.
There are certainly some situations in which access to a metro rail bridge may need to be facilitated through other structures or lands where Metro Rail would be expected to coordinate with those structure or landowners, and there are areas. I can think of some bridges across the Beltway in which Metro Rail infrastructure crosses or otherwise interacts with infrastructure owned by others, and more of that is being built to accommodate the Purple Line. So I'm confident in saying that Metro Rail is continually coordinating with his partners for access and any shared infrastructure. But by and large, Metro owns the infrastructure and maintains it and inspects it, and we serve as their oversight authority to ensure that works.
Any further questions or comments from the commissioners? Because if not, I have a couple myself.
I think it's your turn, Chair.
Okay, I'm just curious, is it possible I'm not a civil engineer, so I'm just wondering, how do you determine the load capability of a structure? Is it just by looking at the outside, or do you have to do some invasive drilling to find out what's under, or do you look at the design drawings, or how is that determination made after the structure has already been built?
Generally, you don't have to do any sort of destructive testing, but you would look at the original design documents, which in some cases might be 40 or 50 years old. In addition to what's more recent would be that every 2 years sort of condition report, which is in itself a few hundred pages, looking at every nook and cranny on the structure and those inspectors would then look at the prior condition report and compare and look at that. So they're looking at the present structure as it's seen through the eyes of the inspector, as well as the original designer who designed the bridge. Both of those combined to make it possible for someone to calculate the load rating.
And as you certainly know, Chair Hart, engineers like to break down complicated problems into small segments. So with bridge load rating analysis, generally the analysis proceeds span-wise. In other words, each span of the bridge, the carrying load bearing structure between bridge piers or other support elements, the span-wise capacity is calculated basically for each span, and then any span having, well, the span having the least amount of carrying capacity tends to receive the load rating for the entire bridge if there are particular differences span to span. Basically, you're kind of looking for weak links and ensuring that you don't overload those weakest links.
That sounds like quite a fascinating challenge, to be sure.
Takes a good many hours, I think, for each structure to do this.
And as you would imagine, the package of calculations for each bridge is significant and lengthy and requires a great deal of effort. And for that reason, it really is commendable to Metro that they've done this work and have rectified what was a deficiency for some apparently protracted period of time.
Does that include some environmental concerns such as soil erosion? You know, you were talking about a bridge, but it's, you know, it's attached to something on the ground, and we keep seeing where we got a lot of changes happening around us, people finding out later on that we built on something, you know, that's not as concrete as we thought it might have been, or something is sinking, you know, we have settling. So it's not just about a bridge, right? It's also the total environmental package.
It has to be. I mean, the calculation methodology mostly is considering the bridge materials, the weight of those materials themselves, the bridge construction methods. And then in the inspection activities, there is a need to inspect any movement, crack formation, settling, and that's one of the main reasons for when certain bridge elements are not visually inspectable, either because you can get close to them or you can look at them with a pair of binoculars, you may have to pay a scuba team to go down underwater and take a look at what's happening there.
But for each condition report from each structure, they would look at everything from that downspout, how is it eroding around the piers, and each pier would be numbered for the report. And this would be over time, you could then see, as this erosion got worse, what is this making? What does this mean for the structure and that sort of thing?
I can't stress enough that all of this kind of work that we're talking about is not work that Metro has to invent. I mean, this is the standard of care and the expectation of stewardship for all bridges, really. So this kind of work goes on for pretty much all of the bridges that any of us see in our daily lives, or at least we hope it does.
Thank you. My second question is, I missed the leap from what we do to getting into electronic medical records and sleep apnea. I didn't understand the connection there. What did I miss in the link between those two?
So it was basically just that Metro, just like with they've always had the ability to understand what the load capacity of their structures is. They could always determine the trend data from their fitness for duty records. Unfortunately, those records just sat idle and weren't able to be used in a trending way because they were just in individual files, so they couldn't actually extrapolate through the whole population of their personnel. You know, which subgroup or which group of employees has, let's say, sleep apnea problems, and what could we do about it? How could they target it in a more efficient way, or just even monitor it on a basic level?
So how did that relate to what we do? I didn't get that connection.
It was just that Metro could have always done more than they had and with the fitness for duty data, especially, and the same with the load ratings. We just, through our urging, we have gotten them to take that to the next level. In the case of load ratings, actually do the work and determine what the load rating is, and then for the fitness for duty data, to use that, take that data and monitor and proactively mitigate sleep apnea issues. They now have the ability to do that. They couldn't have really done that before, except at an individual level. They would have had to open up all however many safety sensitive employees, each file and track at that level.
Okay, well, I think I may have to take this up further offline because I'm not sure I still get the connection, but thank you for that. Any other comments, questions from any of the commissioners for Mr. Raddick or Ms. Rhodes?
No other hands, Chair.
Okay. Having none, seeing none, we will now move on to our next agenda item, which is an update in some of the WMSC's latest activities overseeing Metro Rail's safety certification processes. Paul Smith, WMSC Director of Systems Engineering, will present this item. Mr. Smith?
Thank you, Chair Hart. Today, I will discuss 3 key safety certification projects: the activation of automatic train operations and passenger service, Metro Rail's automatic wayside inspection system, and the design of the 8000 series rail cars. As I reported during our June 10th, 2025 meeting, after extensive collaboration to confirm Metro Rail had instituted the hazard mitigations it and we identified for the use of ATO on the red line, on May 20th, the WMSC concurred on the use of ATO and passenger service on the green and yellow lines. That concurrence letter included notice of follow-up oversight and Metro Rail's reporting obligations as ATO continues in use. This follow-up information provides the necessary safety information for the WMSC to evaluate further expansion of the use of ATO on the blue, orange, and silver lines. Metro Rail continued to comply with the requirements in the concurrence letters, and therefore on June 12, 2025, the WMSC granted our concurrence for the activation of ATO and passenger service on the blue, orange, and silver lines. Currently, Metro Rail has the opportunity to operate an ATO on all lines. Today, I will provide an update on the operational safety performance for all these lines. I'll walk through our review of station overruns, the system-level mitigation efforts underway, and what comes next in our oversight process. Automatic train operation service began on June 15th, 2025 for the blue, orange, and silver lines. And since then, the WMSC has actively monitored station overruns using data reported by Metro Rail, followed by regular meetings, on-site observations, and detailed reviews of the Metro Rail's continued efforts to minimize and eliminate overruns. The WMSC continues to meet weekly with WMATA to track any trends and evaluate Metro Rail's work to improve station stopping accuracy. These meetings include updates from WMATA's railcar fleet and automatic train control engineering teams. In addition, the ATO project team shares information about mitigations and repair work that is being handled by other departments. Based on one of these updates, the WMSC dispatched 3 staff members to observe a track and structures crew as they worked to adjust a third rail end approach at Smithsonian Station. WMATA had shared a working theory suggesting that improperly aligned third rail end approaches may be contributing to the generation of spurious signals due to the electrical arcing that can occur. Third rail end approaches are typically found at the beginning and end of energized third rail sections, such as at stations, crossovers, and other points where the power supply changes. The primary purpose of the third rail end approach is to provide a gradual transition for the train's collector shoe. This collector shoe receives the power from the third rail. These spurious signals have the potential to interfere with the onboard automatic train operation system, potentially preventing trains from correctly registering the program station stop, or PSS. This issue may be linked to an observed increase in station overruns. So we observed this work to confirm what was being performed and then tying that work to a reduction in station overruns at this location, presuming that is the cause. Since WMATA performed this third rail end approach adjustment on July 23rd, there have been 3 station overruns at this location. Prior to the adjustment, there had been 18 overruns across all 3 operating lines, blue, orange, and silver. Returning especially to station overruns while operating an ATO, the slide that's being displayed titled Automatic Train Operation Overruns by Line Since Activation, shows the total numbers reported since each line was activated for ATO and passenger service. The red line, which began ATO service last December 2024, has experienced the highest number of overruns at 322, in part because it has been operating in ATO longer than any of the other lines. The silver lines recorded 93 overruns, the orange line 88, and the blue line 53 since activation on June 15th. The yellow and green lines activated in May 2025 have had 54 and 45 overruns respectively. Now we'll turn to a more focused set of data from July 1st through August 1st. During that period, the silver line saw 53 overruns. The orange line reported 45. Red and blue lines followed with 34 and 28 respectively. The yellow line had 17 and the green line had 15. WMATA is using this information to prioritize corrective actions to reduce overruns and improve ATO performance. Some examples of these corrective actions undertaken by WMATA include the previously mentioned third rail adjustments, marker coil adjustments, railcar OEM support for software and hardware modifications, operating policy adjustments, operator training, and the implementation of temporary speed restrictions at platform locations with a higher incidence of station overruns. In some cases, these temporary speed restrictions have been made permanent where they have proven effective, and WMATA believes that they have had the intended effect of reducing the station overruns. In addition, WMATA has corrected the positioning of marker coils within the track bed. This effort led to a development of a specialized jig, a tool for maintenance crews to use, ensuring more accurate alignment of the marker coils during installation and maintenance activities. The WMSC is closely monitoring these corrective measures, particularly the permanent speed restrictions, in anticipation of formal engineering modification instructions specific to those changes. The WMSC is also tracking these developments closely to ensure that WMATA's efforts are achieving the intended outcome, using a data-driven assessment and a prioritization approach. Another area that we're monitoring closely is where the overruns are happening. And as you can see on the slide here, Minnesota Avenue on the orange line has experienced the highest number of overruns with 17. Farragut West follows with 14, Federal Triangle with 11, and Smithsonian with 9 on the orange line. Overruns on the silver line are spread more broadly across the stations, and this distribution suggests that the causes of these events are not isolated, but instead may be rooted in broader system-wide challenges. In parallel, the WMSC continues to evaluate how WMATA is managing ATO safety internally. That includes reviewing analysis of the overruns, meeting minutes from the Automatic Train Operation Governance Committee, schedules for planned software and hardware updates to improve the stopping accuracy. We're also monitoring WMATA's effort to eliminate incorrect operator use of the station stop cancel button that lets train operators skip a station stop. WMATA reported at a July in-person meeting with the ATO project team that its attempt to disable the station stop button through a software update on the legacy trains, the 3000 and 6000 series cars, did not produce satisfactory results. Subsequently, they've established an engineering modification instruction and are now taking steps to physically disable the station stop cancel button Metrorail has identified as having no operational use within its current operating process on those series of rail cars. WMATA has also continued its campaign of compliance checks across operations staff and field personnel, and early results suggest a strong rate of adherence to rules during those checks. As I mentioned previously, we met on July 9th with WMATA's automatic train operation team to discuss mitigation efforts in more detail. I previously reported on the antenna normalization work that WMATA started last year, and during which it found that not all data was stored in long-term memory. One important update from that meeting involved a software change that is in the contractual stages for the 7000 series railcars that moves that key data from volatile memory to a type of memory that keeps the data even when the power is off of the railcar, thus improving stability and antenna performance. The WMSC will continue to analyze the data, track the results of mitigation measures, and determine whether additional safety conditions are necessary. We are also requesting complete documentation of all changes WMATA is making to ensure that safety improvements are sustainable. Let me now briefly update you on the automatic wayside inspection system, or the AWIS project. When fully operational, the AWIS system monitors train wheel alignment, specifically the back-to-back wheel measurements, which were a critical factor in the October 2021 derailment of a 7000 series rail car, and the subsequent removal of service from the 7000 series rail cars. These measurements will be taken as trains pass designated points along the track. Although AWIS is capable of capturing additional wheel and axle related parameters, WMATA chose to implement the AWIS system following the 7000 series railcar derailment event to enhance monitoring and early detection of alignment issues. When fully constructed, the AWIS system will consist of 6 inspection sites. These AWIS sites consist of several cabinets along the right-of-way, as well as some track bed mounted components. However, this project continues to face delays related to calibration, power supply, and other technical challenges. And importantly, WMATA has not started the work to resolve the 25 outstanding items identified in the safety review that identified and evaluated potential risks. These items must be addressed before the system can be safety certified. To support our oversight, the WMSC will be attending an automatic wayside inspection system training session, during which WMATA and their contractor, UNESCO, formerly known as KLD, for this system will demonstrate how the data is collected, stored, and analyzed when the rail cars pass through these automatic wayside inspection system sites. Separately, WMATA has submitted preliminary safety certification documents for the 8000 series rail cars, including an early review to identify possible safety issues. And we are currently reviewing those materials and will provide feedback no later than the end of August. We will also be requesting the full set of preliminary design review documents for the 8000 series railcars to make sure they meet safety and performance standards established for these railcars. We have not yet received those materials. Thank you, Chair Hart. This concludes this presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for Mr. Smith?
I see no hands, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Silbaugh. Seeing none, we will now move on to safety event investigations. We will hear presentations on all of the reports and then consider a single motion on all of them together. If any commissioner wishes to remove a report from the group that we will consider as a single vote, please indicate that at the end of the presentation on that report. Mr. Quigley, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Hart. In 2024, there were 25 improper door operation events reported by Metrorail to the WMSC. As of July 15th, 2025, there have been 18 such events reported, an increase from the 10 events reported during the same time period last year. The events being presented today all occurred while trains were required to be operated in automatic door operation. As a result of these investigations, Metrorail implemented corrective actions, including requiring involved personnel to attend refresher training on applicable rules and procedures, including door operations. Metrorail redistributed a personnel notice reminding all the train operators to utilize the point and call method, and developed a rail vehicle operator outreach program to increase rule compliance regarding door operations. The causes and contributing factors to the improper door operation events being presented today include loss of focus and situational awareness, non-compliance with written operational rules and procedures, and including those related to door operation and station servicing procedures. None of the events presented resulted in injury or damage. For example, investigation whiskey 386 relates to an improper door operation event that occurred on Tuesday, October 29th, 2024 at approximately 2:48 p.m. The train operator operating outbound train ID 433, which was an 8-car 6000 series train, experienced an improper door operation at downtown Largo Station on track number 2. A few minutes earlier at 2:44 p.m., the train operator entered the platform limits at downtown Largo Station after the terminal supervisor granted a permissive block to cross over from track 1 to track 2 and instructed the train operator to proceed to the 8-car marker and utilize automatic door operations. Upon arrival at downtown Largo, the train operator stopped the train 20 feet short of the 8-car marker, resulting in 2 doors on the trailing car remaining outside the station platform limits. When ADO failed to initiate due to improper berthing, the train operator looked down the platform from the cab window as required by Metro policy, but did not identify that the train was improperly positioned. The train operator then manually opened the doors on the platform side of the train without proper authorization, keyed down, and walked to the opposite end of the train in preparation for departure toward Morgan Boulevard Station. At approximately 2:51 p.m., the terminal supervisor recognized the improper door operation and reported the event to the rail traffic controller. A ground walk-around inspection was performed by a yard operator at approximately 2:57 p.m., confirming that no passengers had fallen onto the roadway. The radio rail traffic controller dispatched a rail supervisor to remove the train operator from service for post-event toxicology testing, consistent with standing operating procedures. The train was subsequently removed from service for post-incident inspection, and no mechanical issues were found. The probable cause of the improper door operation at downtown Largo Station was the train operator's failure to adhere to established door operation procedures by not properly positioning the train at the 8-car marker prior to manually opening the doors. The 3 other improper door operation event being presented today are Whiskey 384, which occurred on October 6, 2024 at 9:14 p.m. at Vienna Fairfax Station. The train operator was instructed by the terminal supervisor to put train ID 923 on track 1 in revenue service. The train operator pressed the right side door open button, opening the doors on the non-platform side. Whiskey 385 occurred on October 3rd, 2024 at 8:07 p.m. The train operator of Green Line Train 504 properly berthed the train at Fort Totten Station, and the doors opened in ADO as designed. After servicing the station, the train operator intended to manually close the doors and press the right side door open button, opening the doors on the non-platform side. The train operator immediately reported the safety event to the control center. And then we have Whiskey 387, which occurred on November 25th, 2024 at 4:21 p.m. The train operator of Yellow Line Train 332 mistakenly opened doors on the non-platform side of the train while attempting to manually reopen train doors to allow another train operator to board. This safety event occurred at King Street Old Town Station. The train operator immediately reported the safety event to the control center. Thank you. That completes this presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Quigley. Are there any questions on these events from the commissioners for Mr. Quigley?
Chair, Commissioner Higgins has raised her hand.
Yes, Commissioner Higgins, please.
Hi, thank you again. Thank you for all your good work on this. Just curious, in this, when we're talking about the overruns, we're not talking about a specific accident. We're talking about preventing accidents. Could you clarify for me and perhaps for others who are not familiar with what might happen? What are we trying to prevent? What are the kinds of accidents that we've seen or aware of, or injuries that occur when there are these kinds of overruns? And it's not that I think it's important to have that on the record. So if you could help me understand it, that would be great.
Yeah, we're talking about station overruns?
Yes.
Okay. Paul, do you want to take this question?
Yeah, thanks, Adam. I think the biggest one that comes to mind, Commissioner Higgins, is the overrun that occurred during the 1996 Shady Grove accident, where the train overran the station and then entered the pocket track and collided with a standing train.
I see.
That's the one that comes to mind that's probably been the most impactful. Typically, what we've seen lately with station overruns is there has not been any incidents or events of that type of nature. We see the station overruns increasing, obviously, which just increases the opportunity for something like that event to occur.
So it's are there other examples, or is it really the idea of a collision with another train that is the biggest concern?
There could also be a collision with roadway workers that may be in close proximity to a station where they're expecting that train to stop. However, WMATA's RWP rules do indicate that workers, when they see a train approaching, are to, get off of the track. The roadway worker in charge should alert them to there's an incoming train. They should get off the track. However, if they kind of take the less safe approach of, hey, we know the train's going to stop at the station, so we got a few more extra minutes to work while the train stops, alights passengers, etc., they may kind of choose to violate that roadway worker protection rule. But those are some of the other incidents that could occur from a station overrun.
Are there any potential issues? And I'm not looking to borrow trouble here. I'm just trying to fill in the information about why we care so much about this, because this is a problem that has not been resolved. Are there issues that we're concerned about with passengers?
I mean, the potential would exist for passengers to be expecting the station stop and then thus maybe getting up out of their seat, or expecting the train to stop and the doors to open. So there could be potential, issues for passengers where they maybe lose their balance or fall over from, the train not stopping and expecting that stop. So we haven't seen any indication of that other than passenger kind of inconvenience with these station overruns.
Say a bit more about the inconvenience.
Well, so typically when the station overrun occurs, the train does not service that station. So if you are expecting to get off, for instance, at Union Station, and the train overruns the station, you may have to go to the other station, get off the train, and then maybe double back.
Okay.
So that would be kind of a delay in your travel times.
Okay, good. Well, that's very helpful, because I know we're very concerned about this, but I also want to make sure we understand fully what we're trying to prevent. So thank you for your helping me.
Our thinking on this, harkens back to the 1996 fatal accident that Mr. Smith described. That was investigated by the NTSB, and that led to not only the NTSB final report, but also a report by the Volpe Transportation Systems Center that followed in the years afterwards. And both of those reports addressed the issue and the engineering unknowns of station overruns at that time. And in a very real sense, our interest in getting to the bottom, or ensuring that Metro gets to the bottom of station overruns, is to put a close to the engineering chapter that was opened by that accident many years ago, and the Volpe report that was written in its wake, to try to understand whether or not there could potentially be any underlying concern with the ATO system that we should be detecting as a result of these station overruns. That's one of the main reasons that we've required Metro to vigorously investigate the station overruns that are continuing to occur, and prior to receiving our full concurrence for operating the system in ATO, to have completed an engineering assessment of that in hopes of frankly answering those questions that first arose in the mid to late 90s.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure for my own benefit, but also for anybody else who might be wondering why we care so much about this, that there are some very serious consequences that can happen. Not that they're reflected necessarily in these particular incidents, but that the potential is there given history, and that this is part of our due diligence and our preventing, as well as our of something that might happen. So thank you.
Chair, the Vice Chair has raised his hand.
Thank you. Vice Chair, please.
Thank you, Chair Hart. Yeah, I had some questions on the wrong side door openings, but since we talked about station overruns, I think one of the most troubling thing for me is the fact that the station overruns that we see, we don't always know why that happened, and to have a system that's designed to stop a train in a station at the right spot that consistently fails to do that, I think it opens a lot of other questions. And the Shady Grove accident is certainly an example of a very critical safety event. But I think when you're using automation, you need to understand how it works and why it's doing certain things. And I think there's still more work to do here to understand. And I enjoyed the presentation talking about the third rail transitions as a potential way to better understand some of the station overruns. But I think we absolutely have to understand, what's going on there, or we risk having another event that's far more serious than what we thought could happen. But really, my questions are about wrong side door openings. With the automatic door operation and automatic train operation, I understood that the operators were trained or at least received some training, some refresher training on door operations and automatic train control. Is that correct?
Yeah, they went through a ADO course.
So in looking at some of these reports here, I note that one of the things that Metro Rail is doing is they're talking about personnel attending refresher training, and it was kind of surprising for me that personnel that had just received training would need refresher training so soon. So I'm not really sure how effective that might be. And I'd like to ask Mr. Quimby if you would talk a little bit about, or Mr. Quigley, if you'd talk a little bit about the use of this push button that they use to open and close the door. Is there an issue with the controls being too close together or confusing that so many operators would mistakenly push the wrong button?
There are two buttons, a door open and a door close, and there might be, I don't know where maybe someone can help me out where there's a berthing button. I don't think the berthing button is close to the door open or door close, but each side of the cab has a door open and door close button that operators utilize. I believe it's just repetition. You're going up and down the line and you get used to hitting on one side based off, where the platform is. And it's more of a situational awareness, just getting used to always servicing, center platform stations, and then you come to one that's a side platform and you hit the wrong button because you service so many. So that's kind of my belief on it. I don't know if Bruce is on here that can. He's more of a train operator than I was, Commissioner Lobby.
So thank you, Mr. Quigley. Yes, you're absolutely right. And also the train operators are they just lose situational awareness before they open the button. They are to activate the button. They're to have their head out the window and looking for the platform and such. So it's that they just lose situational awareness. That's what I will say.
Well, one thing I'm confused about is why we're seeing more of these events. Why is it increasing instead of decreasing at this point? I would think that some of the workload has been removed with automatic door operations. Is there something that we're seeing that would explain why we're seeing an increased number of wrong side door openings?
I would say that's a trend that we need to follow. The train operators are now not activating the doors and they're relying more on automation, and there could be a drift away from just the procedures on properly opening the doors and making sure that they're verifying that they're on the correct side. But it's something that we definitely need to follow up on.
Yeah,
well,
one thing we did see. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Quigley.
No, I was just gonna say, now that the whole system is utilizing ATO, that solves the issue where operators weren't taking the train to the 8-car marker. So now the ATO, when the train does stop, it stops at the 8-car marker, so the auto doors can work. So I would say we could definitely take a look at the numbers in the next month or two. Now that the whole system is relying on ATO, that should bring down some of these numbers.
Okay, thank you very much.
Chair, Secretary Treasurer for our DICE has her hand raised.
Yes, Secretary Treasurer Stardyke, please.
That's almost a tongue twister, huh? So so I was going to say, when you showed the charts, it was kind of like a speed for me, but I noticed on the green line, Minnesota, I think it said that they just started in May of 2025 and they had the highest of 17. So instead of us looking at it like a year later, is there a way we could try to figure out what's going on at Minnesota Avenue where they've had it's only been like a couple of months and they have pushed your chart up to where they're showing that they've done 17 already, just in like a month and a half. Can't hear you, Paul.
Oh, I'm sorry. How about now, Commissioner Fairdeck?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry about that. I had my microphone muted. Yeah, so on the orange line, specifically Minnesota Avenue stood out as a hot spot or an area where these overruns had spiked. WMATA did notice this trend as well and instituted a temporary speed restriction. What was occurring was trains were coming into the platform at a little bit higher speed than operators were kind of accustomed to or comfortable with, so they were hitting the ATO stop button. So WMATA did institute this temporary speed restriction to reduce the train's speed into the platform. And since that temporary speed instruction has been implemented, they have reduced that overrun at Minnesota Avenue considerably.
So why a temporary speed restriction? Is there supposed to be a speed that they are coming in, and why are they making an exception just for this location? And is that something that's going to be spread to all of the operators to know that they have to change their speed when they come towards Minnesota? I mean,
No,
is
the temporary speed restriction is actually an update to the speed codes that the train receives as they're entering that station. So there's really nothing that the operator has to remember or do anything different. It was just a temporary mitigation. They've done these at several different locations where they've noticed the speed of the trains coming into the platform is a little bit higher than what operators are accustomed to in manual mode. And so in some of those locations, they are instituting actual permanent reductions to the speed codes or the ATP speeds that the train receives. So we're tracking those as well. Any areas where they're implementing these into permanent speed restrictions or permanent speed reductions of the ATP code speeds. And so, yeah, this is a typical pattern for areas that are spiking with overruns in ATO or in automatic train operations. So WMATA reviews these and then takes an appropriate action to see if that has the intended effect. Does that answer your question, Commissioner Fairdyke?
it does, but it concerns me now that they are arbitrarily changing speeds depending on the location and the incident. It seemed like there should be a regular speed that's adhered to all and not something that has to be adjusted based off of a location, and why all of a sudden they're making these adjustments. That's all.
Okay.
Dr. Meyer, do you have anything to add on that point?
No, I don't think I do at this time.
I'm similarly curious why it would be a problem unique to this station. Why are the trains entering the station faster than what they're accustomed to at that station and not elsewhere?
Well, also to keep in mind that they did return to the design speeds as well. So the ATP speed codes that were designed when the system was opened are now what they're operating at, which is higher than the manual mode speeds that they were previously at. So all of these areas are they are geographically and different among each station. So the speed before the track circuits that are coming into these station approaches may be higher than the 59 miles an hour that they were previously operating at for most of the system. And so that speed will be greater now. And so they are taking each one of these as kind of an individual example analyzing the data that they have, seeing if they need to reduce that entry speed by adjusting the ATP speeds or the code line speeds that the trains receive.
Chair, the vice chair has raised his hand.
Yes, Vice Chair, please.
Yeah, I think I think the speed increase from 59 to 75 miles an hour, I believe it is, at maximum speed. I think that's fogged some of these issues. If you go back to the Shady Grove accident, that station overrun and collision occurred with the train operating at 75 miles per hour. And you know, as you have the higher speed, the capability of the automatic train operation and the tolerances on it become more critical. And so I can see that by slowing the train down and giving the ATO a better chance to, you know, control the speed, you know, compensate for tolerances you have in the conditions of the brake system and other things, I can see why you would be more successful at a lower speed than you might be at a higher speed. So I don't think that's surprising at all, but I was concerned when Metro not only wanted to go to automatic train operation, but wanted to increase the speeds at the same time or about the same time, because it complicates the issue.
It definitely complicates the issue, and the speeds were increased at the same time as our concurrence to ATO operation, simply because without major and very expensive engineering changes, there simply was no other way to do it. But that said, obviously, Mr. Smith can correct me if I'm wrong. However, my hope would be that some of these temporary speed restrictions may well be, well, some could be converted to permanent speeds, or some may be converted to or actually released as the engineering work to study the overrun issue as a whole continues, and Metro does that work that I was mentioning a few minutes ago to produce, you know, a coherent engineering analysis of the overrun causes and remedies, and that may well be able to address at least some of the so-called hotspots.
That is the hope, Dr. Meyer.
From this conversation that the entry speeds are not the same at every station?
That is correct, Chair Hart. Some of them are different, widely different across the system.
And are there local geographic reasons for that? I mean, design of the system generate the need for that difference, or how does that work?
I think it has depending on the geographic construction of the track, maybe the closeness or proximity of stations to station. You know, all of these things may play a part in how the code lines or the speed charts were developed during construction.
It really is a very heterogeneous system in regard to station approaches. I mean, when you think of the distance between Metro Center and Gallery Place, it's not very far at all. Yet, if you are thinking about the travel distance between stations on the Silver Line, well west of town, west of the airport, those stations are around 5 miles apart. So just the opportunity for speed is very different at different places in the system.
Any further questions from Mr. Quigley?
I see no other hands, Chair.
Okay, seeing none, Ms. Keyrose, would you please present the remaining reports?
Thank you, Chair Hart. Investigation Whiskey 0388 relates to an improper roadway worker protection event that occurred on Thursday, October 10th, 2024. At approximately 11:26 a.m., a contractor serving as an advanced mobile flagger arrived at Shady Grove Station to perform flagging duties for an Office of Track and Structures mobile work crew. The crew was conducting a track inspection between Rockville and Shady Grove stations on Track 1. Upon arrival, the AMF set up lanterns at the 8-car markers on both Tracks 1 and 2 as required and began briefing train operators before they departed the station. At approximately 12:01 p.m., train 101, a 6-car consist, entered the platform at Shady Grove Station on track 1. The train operator was required by Metro Rail procedures to stop at the 8-car marker to receive a safety briefing from the AMF regarding the presence of personnel on the tracks ahead. However, CCTV footage revealed that the train operator did not stop and instead proceeded without receiving the required briefing. Upon realizing that the train would not stop, the AMF attempted to alert the train operator by waving the flag and sounding an air horn to warn the track workers of the oncoming train. At 12:06 p.m., the AMF transmitted an emergency radio message to the rail traffic controller in the control center. Upon hearing the emergency transmission, the mobile track inspection crew immediately moved to a place of safety. As train 101 approached, the train operator reduced speed after noticing the roadway workers, and the rail traffic controller instructed the train to stop. After confirming the roadway workers were clear and safe, the rail traffic controller allowed train 101 to proceed to Rockville Station. Following the event, the train operator was relieved of duty at Grosvenor Strathmore Station by a rail supervisor and removed from service for post-incident toxicology testing. The train was also removed from service, and no damage or injuries were reported as a result of this event. The investigation determined the probable cause of this near miss was the train operator's lack of situational awareness and failure to comply with established Metrorail advanced mobile flagging procedures. Specifically, the train operator failed to recognize the AMF's amber lantern and did not stop at the 8-car marker to receive the required briefing. As corrective actions, the train operator involved received refresher training emphasizing roadway worker protection procedures. Additionally, Metrorail has an open corrective action plan C-0280 to address findings from the 2024 Roadway Worker Protection Audit, which identified gaps in ensuring consistent adherence to RWP rules designed to maintain safety for all roadway personnel. Metrorail has submitted deliverables for the CAP, including a sample of 3 months' worth of evidence of existing RWP rules compliance process and results. This CAP has an expected completion date of October 2026. And I can pause if anyone has questions on the RWP event.
Any questions for Ms. Quiroz?
Yes, the vice chair has raised his hand.
Yes, please.
Yes, Ms. Quiroz, yeah, I know that the Advanced Mobile Flagger was a contractor. I was a little bit surprised at that. Can you or someone on staff, just give us the lowdown on the use of contractors? When does Metro use a contractor, and are they trained the same way as their own employees? What do we think about it?
Yeah, I can let Bruce, Mr. Walker talk about the training. I know they do use contractors for AMFs. They use contractors for track inspectors. They use contractors in their crews every day, but I can let Mr. Walker talk about the training.
Thank you, Ms. Quiroz. So Vice Chair Lobby, so to be an advanced mobile flagger, you need to take the current RWP level 2 training. So typically contractors at WMATA are level 1 trained. So in order for RailPro, which is the contractor that's doing most of the AMF as contractors, those employees are required to take the same level 2 training that WMATA internal personnel take. So their training and competency as far as the procedures for AMF would be identical. It's the same class, the same training, and the same practical that the WMATA internal personnel would have to take.
In general, are we happy with the services that they provide? Do we see any trends that they do a better job or a worse job than a AMF that's a WMATA employee?
So I don't see any trends that one internal or the contractors are performing the job any better or worse than the other. They're both receiving the same training. They're both going through the same exact recertification on an annual basis. So it's pretty much indistinguishable between the two.
Well, certainly in this case, I think the AMF did exactly what he was supposed to, but I know that we've had incidents in the past where we've had AMF issues where they're not in position, or they're don't flag down the trains, or don't put the lights there, or don't have radios or things like that. Do we have any feeling on, is that occurring across the board, or is that an issue related to the contractors or to the WMATA employees?
I would say that's just practical drift from knowing what to do. I know that from my interactions with RailPro that they take their contract very seriously. When their personnel do have safety events, they're typically removed. So, but it's the same training, and I wouldn't say that one is doing it better than the other.
So final question, if we looked at the population of advanced mobile flaggers, just roughly what percentage would be WMATA employees and what percentage would be contractors? About
That information I don't have on hand. That's something that we can look into and give you an exact answer if that's something you would like. We can put that on our list and we can provide that to you and the other commissioners.
Well, do you have a feeling, Bruce, about what it might be, or no idea?
I would rather look to give you the correct information than to hypothesize and give you something that's not correct. I know that WMATA uses contractors to perform the role of the advanced flagger so that they can better utilize our internal personnel to do the more detailed work. But to give you that number, that's something that we would have to look into and then provide to the commissioners at a later time.
Well, you're a true safety professional, not a risk taker here, I guess. So thank you. I'd like to see those numbers sometime.
Absolutely. We'll provide that to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions?
I see no other hands, Chair.
Okay, Whiskey 389, please.
Thank you, Chair Hart. Investigation Whiskey 0389 relates to a train that operated in passenger service with automatic train protection, or ATP, cut out on November 14th, 2024. The train was first transported non-revenue from Alexandria Rail Yard to Franconia Springfield Station with ATP cut out in the lead car 3057. This is indicated by white car numbers displayed to rail traffic controllers on the Advanced Information Management System and illuminated light on the train console, which went unnoticed by multiple employees. The ATP switch is a labeled spring-loaded toggle switch located on the opposite side of the operator's cab behind a door with a Lexan window. The ATP switch is sealed with a metal bar and a wire lead seal. At approximately 4:28 p.m., train operator number 1 departed Franconia Springfield Station operating train 427, later train ID 444, in passenger service. The lead car on the operating end as the train departed Franconia was 3063, and ATP was cut in on that car. After completing the run from Franconia Springfield to downtown Largo Station, train operator number 1 was relieved by operator number 2 at downtown Largo. Operator number 2 began operating train 444 with lead car 3057, now the operating car, toward Franconia Springfield, without identifying the ATP was cut out. Approximately 8 minutes after keying up the train at 5:56 p.m. while traveling between Morgan Boulevard and Addison Road stations, operator number 2 realized ATP was cut out and reported the issue to the Rail Traffic Controller, or RTC. The RTC dispatched a railcar maintenance road mechanic to Addison Road Station to investigate. Although operator number 2 communicated intentions to offload passengers and remove the train from service due to the safety risk, the RTC instructed operator number 2 to continue to Addison Road at restricted speed without providing an absolute block as required by Metrorail policy. At approximately 5:59 p.m., the RTC instructed operator number 2 to offload passengers at Addison Road Station. At 6 p.m., the road mechanic confirmed ATP was cut out, corrected the switch position, and resealed the ATP toggle. The train was permitted to continue in passenger service to Van Dorn Street Station, where it was eventually removed from service at 6:54 p.m. for post-incident inspection. The post-event investigation revealed that earlier in the day, a car maintenance electrical mechanic incorrectly sealed the ATP switch in the cutout position after performing an auto daily safety test on railcar 3057. Additionally, an Alexandria yard operator coupled railcar 3057 to the incident train without noticing the improperly sealed ATP switch. Operator number 1 and operator number 2 both failed to conduct the required interior-exterior inspections prior to initiating passenger operations, and RTC personnel did not recognize the ATP status displayed clearly in Ames. The probable cause of this safety event was a failure to maintain situational awareness and adhere to established Metrorail procedures, specifically Metrorail Operating Rule 8.17, Rail Vehicle Mode of Operation. This incident involved multiple failures by multiple employees spanning 3 different departments, all failing to identify the ATP was cut out on the rail car. Factors contributing to this event included car maintenance personnel incorrectly sealing the ATP switch, train operators' failure to conduct proper pre-operation inspections, the yard operators' failure to identify ATP status prior to coupling rail cars, and control center personnel's insufficient oversight of ATP indications displayed on the AIM screen. As a result of this event, Metrorail completed several corrective actions, including issuing a rail operations personnel notice titled Pre-Trip Inspection Reminder and ATP Compliance, disseminating a notice to interlocking operators to remind train operators to check all sealed switches and console indications before operating trains, developing a safety department video empowering employees to proactively report hazards and near misses, instructing managerial staff to brief employees on this incident, reinforcing ATP inspection procedures during daily inspections, distributing a comprehensive lessons learned document for supervisors to conduct briefings, providing a memorandum to RTC stressing the importance of consistently monitoring Ames displays, particularly for indications that ATP is cut out. In compliance with Metrorail standard operating procedure, both train operators and the RTC were removed from service and underwent post-event toxicology testing. Train 444 was also removed from service and thoroughly inspected, revealing no mechanical deficiencies aside from the improperly sealed ATP switch. No injuries or damage were reported as a result of this incident. And I can pause if anyone has questions for that event.
Any questions for Ms. Quiroz?
I see no hands, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Quiroz, please continue.
Thank you, Chair Hart. The final report before you today, Whiskey 0390, relates to an individual who intentionally entered the roadway at Federal Triangle Station. On Sunday, April 28th, 2024, at approximately 8:37 p.m., Silver Line Train 633 struck an individual who intentionally entered the track area at Federal Triangle Station. The train operator immediately reported the incident to the rail traffic controller. Initially, third rail power was mistakenly de-energized at Stadium Armory Station, but the error was quickly corrected and power was properly de-energized at Federal Triangle Station at 8:38 p.m. Metro Transit Police arrived at 8:41 p.m. and promptly secured the scene, while DC Fire and EMS were notified at 8:43 p.m., approximately 6 minutes after the initial report of the incident from the train operator. Emergency personnel arrived on scene and successfully extricated the individual with non-life-threatening injuries from beneath the train at 9:08 p.m. The probable cause of this incident was the individual's deliberate entry onto the tracks at Federal Triangle Station. Corrective actions implemented by Metrorail included refresher training for incident management for control center staff. Thank you. That completes its presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Quiroz. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for Ms. Quiroz?
Yes, the Vice Chair has raised his hand.
Yes, please, Vice Chair.
Thank you for the report, Ms. Quiroz. I just wanted to hear a little bit more about the delay. I think it took something like 20 minutes between the time the incident took place and the fire department was on scene and ready to assist the victim. Is Washington Metro addressing those types of issues?
So their procedure calls for them to make sure that they call the fire department in emergency within 5 minutes of a report. It could be a fire and smoke, or in this case, person struck immediately, but especially within 5 minutes. In this case, it took 6 minutes until they made their phone call. I don't know if there was a delay on the fire department's end dispatching, but I know that Metro Transit Police was there pretty soon. But
But yeah, there was a slight delay in calling the fire department.
Yeah, it just struck me as 20 minutes seemed to like a long time for someone that was in distress that needed aid. That's 20 minutes seemed like a long time to wait. So, but they'll be looking at all the different aspects of this response. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any more questions for Ms. Keyros?
I see no other hands.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Silbaugh. Seeing none, is there a motion to adopt the investigation reports that have just been presented? That would be whiskey 0384, 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, and 90.
So moved.
Is there a second? Thank you. Vice Chair. Is there a
second.
second? Okay, thank
I
you.
seconded.
Thank you, Treasurer Friar. All in favor, please raise your hand and say yay.
Yeah.
Yay.
Any opposed, please raise your hand and say nay.
Chair, the vote again is unanimous, 6 yeas and 0 nays. The motion to adopt the investigation reports, whiskey 384 through 390, is adopted. They will be presented on our website shortly. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Silbaugh. We have no resolutions to discuss today. Is there any other business that the commissioners would like to address? Hearing none, let me remind everyone that you can always report any safety concerns through our website, wmsc.gov, through our social media channels, or by email. Before adjourning today, I would like to thank Dr. Meyer and his staff for all of their hard work to continuously improve the safety of Metrorail. Having said that, it takes two to tango, as they say, and our staff could not have accomplished what they did without hard work and collaboration by Metrorail staff. You heard several examples of that collaborative effort in this meeting, and I would like to thank Metrorail staff as well for their willingness to work with us to address these challenging issues. I would also like to thank Dr. Meyer and his staff for their presentations in this meeting, and I'd like to thank the commissioners for being so engaged in the process in general and in this meeting in particular. Finally, I'd like to thank the members of the public who attended this meeting. We appreciate your joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you again next time. We will hold our next public meeting on September 16th, 2025. Hearing no further business, this public meeting is hereby adjourned.